Hey, it's Pink Floyd The Wall. Nobody needs another review of Pink Floyd The Wall. I don't. You don't. By the way, I'm going to play this, but I'm going to have it in the other room. You know about the whole copyright stuff that we deal with. When you're playing music on YouTube, even though you're promoting the band and saying, hey, go check this out, they still copyright strike you. So anyway, nobody needs a review of The Wall. We all know it's Roger Waters, and it's about his feeling of when he built a wall, a psychological wall between him and the audience, you know, his fans, whatever. And it's also got World War II references about his dad. His dad was killed in World War II. Here's a side note, though. Final Cut, which was the last album they did together with Roger Waters as Pink Floyd, what consisted of some tracks that were left over from The Wall. Some I actually like The Gunner's Dream. There's a Not Now John, and anyway, but David Gilmour was not happy about this, co-vocalist, guitarist. If they weren't good enough for The Wall, then why are they good enough for this album? Why are we doing this? But Roger Waters did it. So, Wall, the 11th studio album by Pink Floyd, released in November of 1979. I'm not going to give you a review, but I do have some personal stories. So I will share that with you. I have like at least 3 personal stories about this album that I will tell you. Okay, I'll give a little bit of the background. But if you know everything and you want to skip to just my personal 3 little stories that involve this album in my life and sections of my life, I'm actually going to pause here for a second so that future Darin can tell you where to skip in this video. So I'm going to give myself a space for a little voice over here. Please skip to the 5-minute and 45-second marker for personal stories. Thank you, Darin. Okay, so yeah, just skip ahead to there for my 3 personal stories. But Roger Waters conceived of The Wall during Pink Floyd's 1977 In the Flesh tour, which In the Flesh is the title of the first track. We're listening to it right now. A lot of sound effects on this album. Love that. The Beatles did it. Beach Boys did it. But Pink Floyd really, you know, with the Dark Side of the Moon, the cash register. Anyway, a lot of external stuff going on here, but they were on tour, and Roger Waters conceived of this, and he thought of the character Pink after himself and former band member Syd Barrett. The recording of this took place in 1979, and they brought in a producer, Bob Ezrin, to kind of help refine the concept and bridge tensions between David Gilmour and Roger Waters, or Roger Waters and the rest of the band. And something that Bob Ezrin did as a producer that was good is he wrote out like a storyboard, basically, which you would do maybe for a movie, but kind of convinced the guys, like, this is the story this should tell, these songs should go this way and everything. So the band credits him with helping to make sure that the Wall was made and produced, and they didn't kill each other. Now, the Final Cut was their final album with Roger Waters, but this was an album that was very disjointed. In fact, band members say that they hadn't really worked together as a band several years before this. Maybe go back to like Wish You Were Here or something like that. But Roger Waters then went on to do some solo stuff. David Gilmour did a little more Pink Floyd and a little David Gilmour. The Wall is one of the best known concept albums of all time. 30 million copies sold. Second best-selling Pink Floyd album after Dark Side of the Moon. So Roger Waters despised the tour 1977 In the Flesh, out to promote animals, and he was angered by the audience's rowdy behavior, such as setting off fireworks in the middle of songs, and convinced that they were not really listening to the music. And in fact, during the final show in July of 77 at Montreal Olympic Stadium, a group of noisy and excited fans near the stage irritated him so much that he went up and spit on him. And he realized, you know, he was shocked by his own behavior, is what he said, and realized that what had once been a worthwhile and manageable exchange between the band and the audience had been utterly perverted by scale, corporate ego, whatever, and all that remained was an arrangement that was essentially sadomasochistic. And that night, Waters spoke with producer Bob Ezrin and a psychiatrist friend of Ezrin's about the alienation and despair he was experiencing. He articulated his desire to isolate himself by constructing a wall across the stage between the band and the audience. The concept was an instant source of inspiration, and you can Google all that, because they made the movie and all that. But I'm just going to tell you, so I have the 20th anniversary. This is mine, not even from the library. This is my Pink Floyd The Wall album, and I got some stories about this. So, In the Flesh. There is, okay, so it's like, so you think you might like to go to the show. And this came out, I'm, 13 years old. And it was one of the first times that I had, for Christmas, I got a boombox. Had a dual cassette, which I love because you could copy from cassette to cassette. Now, most people probably use this to copy a friend's cassette tape or make mixtapes to give to people, because you could record off of the radio as well, dual cassette and the radio. But aspiring musicians and songwriters, of which I was, I like to use it where I could record myself playing a little bit of, didn't have any drums, but I would just, make some noise, and then record myself playing a ding, 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 a little guitar, did have a guitar, and then play those both together while I sang or played another guitar or tinkled around on the Casio keyboard, and record that onto another cassette. So it was how you made demos, basically. But what I did, when I first got that, before I used it for any of that, I was listening to this album, and the way back on the fourth side of the album, basically, side 2 of the disc 2 of the compact disc, but side 4 of the double album, In the Flesh, track 8. So there's an extended instrumental piece. So they basically do the whole song instrumental, and then it comes in with the lyrics, which I loved. So you think you might go to the show. I got some bad news for you. Sunshine Pink isn't well. He stayed back at the hotel, and they've sent us along as a surrogate band. We're going to find out where you fans really stand. So anyway, what I did was I played the instrumental version, and then I sang the words over it. This is 1980, 79, 80. There's no computer or anything. No, I didn't have any musical equipment, any professional equipment. So I just click, click. And I thought it was the coolest thing because, see, this was like kind of pre-karaoke, I guess, even. The idea that I could get just instruments and then I could sing over them like a karaoke. Like now you would just do that karaoke. But I love that they had that instrumental part. So I play the instrumental part. I sing myself singing over it. And then I just had to play it for my brother and my mom and my stepdad. And I was so excited. I was like, oh, listen to this. I did this song. And because I was a songwriter and I would come to them sometimes and say I wrote this song, I think they may have, maybe all three of them, I don't know how familiar they were with Pink Floyd, but they might have thought that I wrote the song, except the musicianship was well beyond my capabilities. But, so I play that and I'm singing it, and I'm this little 13-year-old kid just so excited, look at what I did. And they were, okay, not real impressed. But so that was my first experiment. And then after that, then I did start doing my own songs and where I would record different pieces and stuff. But I just remember being so excited about that, listening to that song and realizing, hey, I can sing over this instrument, record myself singing over this instrumental, and make it sound like I, put myself in with a band. I don't know, crazy, stupid. So that was In the Flesh. Now, fast forward, years later, I am out. So now it's my high school, 83, 84, and I got along with a lot of different people. I was a wrestler and ran track, so there were some jocks that I knew and hung out with. Then I also, because I was a poor kid, we didn't have a lot of money, and I would buy shirts at Swap and Shop that had like Black Sabbath or whatever. I had concert t-shirts, I had Harley Davidson t-shirts and wore jeans, and when I first started, whatever, 6th grade, 7th grade, we had just transitioned from like government housing, townhome kind of things. I was kind of a poor, kid. I looked like maybe a kid that would be like a skater or a druggie or something like that, but I didn't do any drugs, didn't smoke, any of that kind of thing. But those kind of kids, I could hang out with them. We would talk about music, Harleys and whatever, and they had crappy home lives, and I had crappy home lives, and they had a bunch of different stepdads and stepmoms, blah, blah, blah. So go along with them. Then I was an aspiring writer, and I liked to be like in the yearbook staff, that kind of thing. And once I started working part-time at Worlds of Fun, the amusement park in Kansas City, I could afford to go buy myself a couple of polo shirts and an Izod, La Tigra, whatever. And I started dressing a little bit more preppy-like, which, of course, the people that I hung out with that were like black t-shirts, and what happened to this dude? And so I would hang out with some of those guys. So I had friends in all these different groups. And so I remember the craziness of the different group dynamics. It's just like every teenage high school movie that you've seen, but I would go out with a group of people on Friday, and maybe there was a house party at somebody's house where their parents were gone for the night or something, and there would be the Gap Band, Oingo Boingo, whatever, mid-'80s stuff, but it was new wave, kind of stuff playing, and they'd have beer, like cans of beer, or even kegs, which who knows where they got these things. We're 16, 17 years old, but it happened. I didn't drink beer. I didn't really care about any of that, but I would go and hang out, talk to the people, and listen to music and stuff like that. And that's where I picked up on a lot of that style of music. The Cure, Kaja Goo Goo, probably stuff. Especially remember the Gap Band being huge with You Dropped a Bomb on Me, Burn Rubber on Me, different things like that. Then I go out on maybe a Saturday night, and I go out with my friend Paul that plays guitar, and we actually record songs together and stuff. And he goes out with a group of people, the jeans, black t-shirts, rock and roll, smoking pot, blah, blah, blah. And we're just out cruising around. He's like, my friend's got this party, so we go there on a Saturday night, and everybody's sitting completely different vibe from the thing before, where I probably wore like my red polo shirt and my Sergio Volante jeans or whatever. And so now I'm wearing my Rush Moving Pictures tour t-shirt or something, and we go, and we're sitting in this room. It's in the living room, and I know there had to be like love seat, couch, maybe sectional. I just remember like it feeling like a square or a circle of people just sitting back, leaning like this, and passing a joint around. More recently as they became legal, of course, I've tried gummies, CBD and THC gummies, but I've never inhaled any marijuana, and I hadn't at that time. And I don't know, my parents, my grandparents, my brother, everybody in my family smoked, and I got so much of it as a kid, cigarette smoke, in my lungs and stuff, that it just made me sick and disgusted. I never started. Thank goodness. But for whatever reason, I was disgusted by all that. Never started smoking cigarettes, so I never even tasted that other than breathing in from grandma, being stuck in the car with grandma in the station wagon with the windows up, But no joints or anything. But the song that was playing, they were playing Pink Floyd, the Wall album, and I just remember sitting there, and it's almost perfect that the song was Comfortably Numb. I'm sitting in the middle of a couch with like 4 people, maybe even 5 or whatever. It just a couple people over here, a couple people there. I'm sitting in the middle, and I was a small guy. I'm still not real big, but I was a small guy in high school. Example, I wrestled at the 112 weight my junior year and wrestled 119 my senior year, so I was a small guy. And I'm just like sitting in there all like bunched in, between these people, and around comes this joint, and the guy next to me does this little thing, hands it to me, and I swear it's like right at the beginning of the Comfortably Numb guitar solo is starting, and I was like, if ever there was a time that you're gonna try marijuana, I wasn't driving, I rode there with somebody else, Pink Floyd Comfortably Numb guitar solos on, I'm sitting in a dark, candlelit, 1970s, 1980s looking living room, and I took it and I just passed it on to the next person. This went around a couple more times, but I just remember it's such an experience. It's one of those things that sticks out forever. I will remember going to that party and listening to I think they probably had to flip to the different albums, or it was a 4-album, 4-side 2-album deal. But I just remember sitting there for the longest time, and people were talking and stuff, but basically there's no dancing or anything. You're just sitting on the couch, they're passing around a joint. I think some of them probably had like cups of beer or whatever. Whereas at the party before, there weren't any cups, there weren't any like red, so it was just people getting a can of Budweiser out of the ice in the bathtub, and people dancing like this. I can't even think of like what 16 Candles or some movie like that, where you picture like Blaine and them, and or just the kids out on the dance floor doing ding 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 ding, so that kind of stuff. This was just, we're listening to Pink Floyd and we're chilling out, and I had a great time. I just, mother, do you think she's really... And so that's my second story. And then just real quick, because I need to write that down, put that on my blog or my autobiography about how music has touched me in my life. I didn't start playing guitar until around, that's probably about the same time as this album, or maybe a little later. And one of the first songs that I learned from a guy who lived across the street from us, where I lived with my mom and buddy, stepdad, there was a guy across the street that played guitar. He's a professional guitarist. He played on cruise ships, and he played a lot of like Steely Dan and stuff like that, Well, he taught me how to play Another Brick in the Wall on guitar, and I just had like a cheap little acoustic guitar. I was going boo doo 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 doo, and then the little do 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 do. So that was one of the first things that I learned on guitar, and that's what got me into playing guitar. And I probably could still play it a little bit today, but I might need to go and look at my notes, because from that time I had a notebook where I wrote down everything that another guitar player would show me, because we didn't have the internet or anything, didn't have word processor. I have this notebook where I wrote down, and even drawing tablature. Here's this chord, and then this chord, and this chord. I got all those. So if I got that, I could probably play The Wall. It did not learn Comfortably Numb. But then, around the same time, he also taught me to play what's basically the bass line of Money. Boom, do 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 do. And I still use that to this day. When I tune my guitar, or whatever guitar I'm on, I'll play that bass line from Money, because it kind of hits, a few different strings, and do 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 do. It helps me to check and make sure that I actually have the guitar's in tune and it sounds good. Because if that bass line is just a little bit off in my ear, then I know, go back and retune. So that's my Pink Floyd The Wall stuff. What am I going to tell you? It's Pink Floyd, it's The Wall, I love it. But there's just a little personal stuff about me and Pink Floyd The Wall. Thanks for listening. Thanks for checking out the Darin Show. Let me give a little smile here with the Pink Floyd personal stuff, man. Abbey Road, Beatles, walking across the crossroad, but it's Darth Vader and the Stormtroopers instead. So, it's the Darin Show. Have a great what have you.